project has been so long overdue and I am super excited to finally share it with you guys. If you love my beginner boxy pouch pattern, then you'll also love my flat bottom pouch. I'll be walking you through how to sew one of these from start to finish. This is a great project to practice sewing zippers. They're fairly quick to whip up, so they make great gifts or for selling at markets. You can make this bag with or without the curved zipper. All these samples I have here show the curved zipper, but I'll show you how to do both methods. I made a few different sizes to help you visualize which ones you might want to make. This one, it's the mini. It is so adorable. I love to use mine to store my quilting clips beside my machine. And this is definitely my most used size out of all of these. This is the small. I like to use this for keeping it in my purse to store makeup or medicine or anything like that, so it doesn't roll around in the bottom of my bag. This is the medium. This is really great if you're going on a short trip where you only need a handful of things. It would also make for a great project bag for storing yarn if you're a knitter or a crocheter. And this one is the large one. This is great if you're going on a longer trip. Oops, there's a hair on it. This is great if you're going on a longer trip or you need to store larger products. Today, I'm gonna show you guys how to make the mini version, which is my favorite. I'll have the fabric requirements and the measurements listed below. If you prefer to follow written instructions, I'll have my shop with the PDF pattern linked below. The PDF version has the measurements for all the sizes I showed you, as well as printable templates for US letter and A4 paper. Let's get started. For this project, you're gonna need 2 prints. Print 1 will be our exterior and print 2 will be the lining. From print 1, we're gonna need to cut out 2 pieces that measure 7 inches by 4 3/4 inch for the exterior. And if you're using directional fabric, make sure that it is running on the short edge, the 4 3/4 inch edge. We will also need to cut out 1 B piece, which measures the width of our zipper by 2 1/4 inch. I'm using a number 3 zipper. That's what I recommend for this project and for this size bag. The width of my zipper is 1 inch, so my piece measures 1 inch by 2 1/4 inch. So make sure to double check the width of your zipper if yours is wider than mine. If you're opting to not do the curved zipper on this project, then you'll need to cut out an additional B piece. From print 2, you'll need to cut out 2 C pieces that measure 7 inches by 4 3/4 inch for the lining of the bag. And again, if you're using directional fabric, make sure that it is running along the 4 3/4 inch edge so it's aligned on the inside of your bag. From your fusible fleece, you'll need to cut out 2 pieces that measure 7 inches by 4 3/4 inch. Since this is a non-woven interfacing, it doesn't matter which way you cut it out. Finally, you will need a number 3 nylon zipper and a zipper pull. You can use a different size zipper if you don't have a number 3. If you're using a closed end zipper, which is most common in craft stores, I'd recommend using one that's a little bit bigger than the suggested size, so it can be cut down to fit perfectly. I like to use zipper by the yard so I can cut mine to be the exact size I need, and I'll link some below if you're interested in trying it out. For the small pouch, you'll need a zipper that measures 6 1/4 inch. If you opted to do the tabs on each side, instead of curving the zipper, then yours should be 6 inches. Now that everything is cut, we can begin with our first sewing step. Taking our A and D pieces, we're gonna place it so the wrong side of our A piece is facing the glue side of our fusible piece, our D piece. We want to align all the edges so nothing is overlapping like this. We want it to be perfectly straight on top of each other. Just like so. And then we'll take this to our iron and we're going to fuse them together using the manufacturer's instructions. After they are fused together, you can either leave them how they are, or you can add some decorative quilting lines. If you're using cotton batting instead of fusible fleece, then I strongly recommend that you do quilt these pieces, just so your batting doesn't turn into a big ball inside of your bag. I really like how vertical lines look on this pouch, and that's what I did in my mini version here. I did these vertical lines, and I think they look really nice, so that's what I'm going to be doing on these pieces. When it comes to marking my fabric, sometimes I like to make markings on the wrong side, and then I will sew over them so I make sure my lines are nice and straight. Other times I like to use the guide bar on my machine or use a hair marker. I think this time, since this piece is so small, I might just use the guide bar on my machine. So our pieces, if you quilted them, will be looking something like this. So we can move on to our next step, which is going to be working with our zipper. So we're going to take our zipper and our zipper tab. Now, if you are going to put a zipper tab on both ends, it would be looking something like this. This is a different project. This is my Sawtooth Star pouch, and this had a zipper tab on both sides. So if this is what you're planning to do, I'm gonna link that in the card in the corner so you can head over there to see how you do this. It will just be adding this zipper tab onto both sides. So really this technique, all you have to do is repeat it on the opposite side, and then you can skip this whole section of the video on curving the zipper. So how do we get this onto the zipper? So we're going to start, because we are doing a curved zipper, we need to figure out which way the zipper is closing towards. So an easy way to figure that out is to flip the zipper tape over. And as you can see, one side of our zipper pull is flat towards the zipper teeth, and the other side is pointed. See, this side's flat, this side's pointed, and think of the point like an arrow. So this is going towards this side of the zipper, so the zipper is closing this way. So when we flip it over, it's closing this way, so we want to work on the other side of the zipper. So what I'm going to do, just to avoid some confusion, is separate the zipper tape, just like that, so I know I'm putting my tab on this side. So going to our zipper tab, which is our B piece, we want to have the right side facing up. And then we're going to place our zipper with the teeth side facing up like this, aligning it with the edge of the fabric. So you can see the right side of the fabric is facing the back of the zipper. We're going to take this to our machine and sew across using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So with it attached, it should look something like this. What we're gonna do is flip it over so we see that zipper tab, and we're going to fold it away from the zipper. And I just like to press this with my finger. Then we're going to flip it so that we see the zipper teeth. We're gonna take this raw edge and we're going to fold it in to meet with the end of the zipper tape. Give it a little press with our finger. It doesn't have to be an official press with the iron, just something to give the fabric a little bit of a crease. And then we're gonna fold it in one last time. And then we're gonna do an edge stitch across to secure the zipper tab in place. I like to use a 1.8 or a 2 stitch length, something a little bit shorter, or you could use something a little bit wider. It's really personal preference as long as this zipper tab is secure. After sewing, you should be left with a piece that looks like this. So you're just gonna set that aside for a minute, and we're gonna bring our exterior A pieces out again. And if you're using directional fabric, you'll wanna locate the top edge of your piece. I think mine's kind of directional. I'm just gonna go with what I think would look the best if it were standing up with the zipper. I like the way it looks like this and like this. So this here and here are my top edges. And we're gonna grab a ruler and a marking pen, and we're gonna make our markings for centering the zipper. So to do that, we're gonna work one piece at a time. And taking our ruler, we're going to measure 1/2 inch in on that top edge, just like that on one side and again on the other. And then we'll do that on this piece as well, measuring 1/2 inch. And I'm just using a water erasable pen, so these markings will come off when I just wet the area. Perfect. So I'm gonna put one of these panels to the side for now. Now we're gonna take our zipper tape and one of our quilted pieces, and we're gonna line it up so that the tab, I like my tabs to be on the right side of my pouch, so I'm going to make sure that is on this side, and I'm going to flip it over so that the zipper teeth are face down on that top edge. Now we're only gonna work with 1/2 of the zipper tape at a time. So as you see, this side of the tape is closer to the edge when it's flipped, so we're gonna start with this side. We're gonna rotate the zipper 90 degrees. So the teeth are lining up with that 1/2 inch marking that we made, and the raw edge of the zipper is lined up with the raw edge of the top. We're gonna take this to our machine and sew an edge stitch very close, about a scant 1/4 of an inch or even smaller than that, just to tack this in place. So mine is tacked in place now. We're going to take our zipper tape, and with the closed edge that we made, we're going to line that up with the marking that we made on the other side. So you can use a clip to just keep that in place, and you're gonna make a couple stitches, again, close to the edge to tack this in place. All right, so now that that's tacked in place, what I like to do is grab a couple quilting clips. We're going to line the rest of that zipper tape up. I like to start on the edge with the closed end. We can make our zipper pull move as we need. Now, when we get to the side that needs a curve, this zipper tape, it's kind of want to naturally curve. And as we get closer, we see that there's going to be this little bit of extra fabric. We just want to make kind of like a 90-degree corner. And I just like to pinch my fabric, and it makes this little tab here. So we want to make sure that this little tab is facing up like this. And we'll put a clip in there. Just like that. So we'll take this to the machine again, and we're going to sew down using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So when you attach it, you should be left with something that looks like this. The zipper tape will be open on this side, and then it will be curved in on the other side. I also forgot to mention that when you sew this down, you can use your zipper foot if you like. Mine's pretty narrow, the foot that I like to keep on my machine, so I usually don't switch it out. But if you're a beginner, I would just highly suggest switching over to your zipper foot. You'll probably find it a lot easier to attach this. Now we're gonna grab one of our C pieces. This is our lining piece. And we're gonna place it so the right side is facing the zipper. So the right side here is also facing the right side of our exterior. And again, just taking a couple clips, we'll want to line up those long edges. And if you're using directional fabric, make sure that the top edge of that fabric is matching the top edge where the zipper tape is. So again, we'll take this to our machine and sew across using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Next, we're going to open up that lining piece so we can see the zipper tape. I'm just gonna give that a little press with my finger. And then I'm going to bring it around so that the wrong side of our exterior is facing the wrong side of the lining, and our zipper tape is exposed on the outside. You're gonna take this to your iron and give it a quick press just on this seam here, and be careful if you're using a nylon zipper to not touch it because it could melt under the heat of your iron. So now that our piece is ironed, nice freshly pressed, we can work on attaching the exterior to the other side of our zipper. So we're gonna take our remaining A piece, and making sure that we know which side is the top where we did those markings, we're going to line it up with the other side of the zipper like this, just so we can visualize how we're gonna do this. And what we'll do is take the side that has the zipper already attached, and we're going to flip it so that the edge of the zipper tape that hasn't been sewn down is lined up with that top edge of our other piece. Then we're gonna rotate it. And grabbing those quilting clips, again, we're going to take the side of our zipper, and if it's a little too short, we can open our zipper tape up a little bit. And again, we're gonna wanna rotate the zipper tape so that the teeth align with that marking that we made. And we'll sew a couple stitches there to secure it in place. Then on the side where the tab is, we're going to line it up with the other marking. Just like that. And then once we've tacked those two spots in place, we'll again line our zipper tape up and sew across, remembering to fold the little tab up towards the raw edge. Now, like before, once we have attached the zipper to the exterior, we're gonna take our remaining C piece and place it so the right side is facing down on top of the zipper. And we'll use a couple clips to keep it in place. And we'll sew across using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then we'll open the fabric up and iron it like we did to the other side. After our zipper is attached, just like that, we're gonna sew 2 sets of stitches alongside the zipper to secure the lining in place, and that'll make sure the lining doesn't accidentally get caught in the zipper. And that's what this stitching is gonna look like, just along the edge here. I like to use about a 2.5 or a 3 stitch length, just a top stitch along either side. And I like to keep it fairly close to the edge, maybe about 1/8 of an inch, but you can do whatever you prefer. It's just important to keep it secure so nothing gets caught in your zipper. Next, we're going to take the 2 exterior pieces and a couple clips or pins, and we want to line up the bottom edges just like this, and we'll clip them in place. And then we'll flip it around and do the same thing. Oh, I always forget this part every single time. Make sure that your zipper is opened at least halfway, if not more. And that's so you can turn your pouch inside out. It's the most important part, but I always seem to forget that one. So again, we're going to align the bottom edge and then the bottom edge of the lining, that's the long edge. And sometimes pins are easier for the lining just because it's a little bit thinner, but I'm gonna use some clips. And essentially we just want all these edges to align nice and neat. When we get to the edges here, what I like to do is just fold back one of the sides, and I like to line up the exterior pieces so that the edges meet. And I just like to give the lining a little bit of a tug so nothing is stuck underneath when I put my clip. And then on the other side, this is the side with the zipper tab, and what you'll want is for the zipper tab to be poking through on the side where the lining is, just like this. And again, I just fold it back to see if it is lined up. Perfect. So going to our sewing machine, what we're gonna do is starting in the lining, we'll start about here with a couple inches from the edge there. We're going to sew down, pivot, sew across, and when you're going across the side here with the zipper, there's a lot of extra fabric, so just sew slow to make sure you're not breaking your needle. You're gonna go all the way around the exterior, back to the lining, and you're gonna stop about here. So you're gonna wanna leave a hole in your lining that's about 3 inches wide. And that's just to make sure we have enough room to turn the pouch inside out later on. So when you start and stop, remember to backstitch, because if you don't, this seam will come undone when you go to turn it inside out. Make sure you're using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I like to use a 1.8 or a 2 stitch length for the perimeter. So after sewing around the perimeter, we should be left with something like this. All of our sides should be sewn down, and we should have a hole in the bottom. So after our pouch is sewn, we should be left with a hole in the bottom like this and our sewn seam all the way around. Next, we're going to grab our ruler and a marking pen. And this is the mini, so we're going to measure and mark 3/4 of an inch from the seam. And why we want to measure from the seam and not the edge of the fabric is sometimes, as you can see here, I was a little off when I sewed. So if I measured from here, my box corner could become askew or not line up perfectly or be even on each side. So that's why we want to measure from these stitches that we made. So taking my marking pen and my ruler, again, I'm measuring 3/4 of an inch, just like that. And then what I like to do is make a line on the diagonal to the corner of the seam. And this is gonna help us line up our boxed corners. So I'm gonna repeat this on all of my corners on this side and the other side of my pouch. Great, so now that our corners are marked, I'm just gonna take a pair of scissors. I'm just going to trim down the corners, just like that. We're gonna clip them on an angle. Just be careful not to go through the seam that you made. Just like that. And that's just gonna help us reduce bulk when we're making our box corners. So you're gonna put your hand in through the lining. And on the exterior, you're just gonna pull the fabric pieces apart from each other. And you're gonna squish down the corner to form a triangle. Now, those lines that we made through the center of our square should be on the folds of our triangle. And what you're gonna do is make sure that one of the seam allowances is pointing to the right or to the left, and the other one is pointing to the right. So they're in opposite directions. And I like to just roll those seams between my fingers to make sure that they are nice and close together. Then I double check to make sure that those lines are on the sides. And I grab my quilting clip and keep that in place. And then I do the same thing on the other side. Pull the fabric pieces apart. Now make sure that whatever way you pointed the seam on this side it follows through to the other side. So it's pointing towards the right here. I want it to point towards the right down here. That'll make sure the seam doesn't get twisted up in the bottom of the bag. And again, if the seam is pointing to the right down here, it's gonna wanna point to the left on the other side. Great, now we're gonna do the same thing with the lining. Pulling the fabric apart. And pointing our seam allowances in different directions. Double checking. Yep. Great. Now taking this to our machine, we're going to sew across the lines that we created when we made the markings on the corners on all 4 of our corners. We're gonna sew across. Then we're going to clip the extra fabric and have about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance left over. So once you've boxed your corners, it should be looking something like this. And you know you've done it right when that seam goes across the line that you made on both sides. So if it looks a little crooked or a little wonky, you might want to take it out, and you can always pull your fabric apart like this and put a pin further down, and that'll really help to make sure that this corner here is perfectly squared. So again, taking your scissors, just gonna cut down to be about 1/4 of an inch on all my sides. And some people like to cut their corners before they sew, and that method is great. Personally, I really like doing it this way because it ensures that the fabric doesn't shift or doesn't warp while you're sewing it. And then it also lets you take it apart and redo it if you're off. If you cut it off, it's very hard to try and get that to be the right size again. So I've clipped all of my corners, and now we're going to turn our pouch inside out. So using that hole in the lining, very carefully going to start bringing the lining fabric through, just like this. And slowly, you'll start to see your pouch emerge. And you can open the zipper up the rest of the way. And then you'll want to flip it inside out, just like this. And I like to pull the lining out and put my fingers inside and push out the corners of the exterior. While I'm doing that, I'm just going to trim some threads. It's very good practice to trim your threads as you're sewing because you have less trimming to do at the end. And see how nice and sharp those boxed corners are? They nested perfectly into each other, and that's due to the way that we did the corners. So the same here. I'm just gonna make sure everything is nice and straight. I'm gonna pull the lining out of the bag a little bit. Now you can either close this hole by hand or you can do it by machine. I prefer to do it by machine just because it's a little bit quicker and I don't really have the patience to sew this closed by hand. So you can take this to your iron really quickly and just give it a little bit of a press. I just folded in the seam allowance in about 1/4 inch because that was our seam allowance for the lining. And I'm just going to sew a stitch very close to the edge of my fabric, an edge stitch, and close that in place. But if you want to do it by hand, I will make sure to link a video where I show how to do that. So I'm just going to take my scissors and trim my loose threads from sewing that down. And then I'm going to put my lining back inside my bag. And the final step I like to do is just give it a good press. I want to poke that corner out there. And how I like to do that is on the bottom, I line up the fabric, so from corner to corner, just like that, and then I give it a little bit of a press here, and then again here. And just so you can see the bottom, I gave it a little bit of a press so it will stand up on its own a little bit better. Thank you guys so much for watching the video today. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did making it. If you have any questions on today's project, please leave them in the comments below, along with any suggestions for future projects. Happy sewing, everyone!